Most people don't have unlimited room to be able to plant food plots for deer. If you're like me and have limited amount of space to put in your food plots, you need to maximize the results that you get in the small space that you do have. In this video, I'm going to show you the best way to make sure that your small food plot produces as much food as possible. Disclaimer, we are going to be using my version of big equipment for this video, but anybody can accomplish the same thing even on a budget. Really quickly, if you like this type of content, make sure to hit that like button. So the objective of what we're trying to do today is to fill as much space in our food plot as possible, and that goes for vertical and horizontal space. So step number one, and please do not skip this step, is to get a soil sample. It takes about 5 minutes to get a soil sample done. You mail it in, you get your results, and most people overestimate the quality of their soil and underestimate the difference that this makes in the end result. I'd guess that 99% of the time your food plot is going to be acidic. Plants have a certain pH zone where they're best able to uptake nutrients and produce maximum tonnage. So if you don't have time to do a proper soil sample, it's probably a safe bet to at least throw a couple bags of pelletized lime on your little food plot. They're about $5 or $6 at whatever local farm store you have in your area, and probably even cheaper if you get it from your local co-op. Step number two is to actually add the proper amount of lime and fertilizer. And again, this is one of the most overlooked steps. There is an additional cost involved with this step, but I promise you that it's worth it when you have beautiful, lush food plots that last well into the season when everyone else's food plots are dried up. You're gonna thank yourselves for following the proper steps. So ideally, you would have completed step 2 ahead of time, and then step 3 would be to come in about 4 weeks prior to planting time and spray glyphosate on your entire food plot. You want to basically inhibit any weed growth so that way your food plot can grow competition free. We sprayed this food plot about 6 weeks ago, and this was a lush clover field, and clover is pretty glyphosate resistant, so it didn't kill it all. It knocked it back a little bit, and we're going to end up planting right into it. But what you're going to be left with after spraying prior to coming in actual planting time is a good seed bed. You're going to have soil exposed. Here right now we have about 60% of soil exposed, so we're going to be able to seed right into that. It's going to get good seed to soil contact, and we're going to have an awesome food plot to hunt over this fall. So step number 4 is to come in right before good rain. We're finally getting rain this weekend. We're planting a week or 2 later than ideally I would have, and that all changes depending on where you live in the country. But there's a million food plot blends out there, and every company is going to say that they have the best one. But what I have found to be the maximum tonnage, which is what we're going here, we're trying to feed as many deer as possible and have as much food as possible, is to plant a brassica blend. So here we have a mix of the Whitetail Institute brassicas. We have a couple different ones, and we're gonna make sure that we measure these appropriately. So we're gonna plant a blend of brassicas in here. There's turnips, radishes, kale, rape, and that's gonna give us a ton of tonnage. And I love planting brassicas because not only do they produce a ton of leafy green food above the ground, but those giant bulbs provide food well into the winter, and the deer just seem to hammer them in my area. So that's what we're gonna do first, is plant a blend of brassicas. This is critical. I see a ton of people make the mistake of putting down way too much seed. In some circumstances, that's okay, but for brassicas especially, they need room to grow. They need to be able to absorb a certain amount of nutrients from the ground, and if you plant them too closely together, they're not gonna get very big, and they're gonna turn purpley and rainbow color, and they're not gonna do very well. So you wanna follow the recommended seed rate on the bags. Don't exceed that. If anything, go a little bit under, and then we'll get into the next steps. But first step in actually planting is to put down our brassica seeds. So step number 5, after you broadcasted your brassica blend into the ground, is to come back and overseed everything with a clover blend. I like the clover from Whitetail Institute. In this food plot right now, I actually had an existing clover plot. I've been trying to kill it off and it just won't go away, but we've got it to a point where it's about 30% coverage in this area. So instead of seeding over top of the brassicas, I'm actually planting brassicas into this clover. My hope would be that these brassicas germinate, they grow really aggressively, and with the space that they do have to grow, they'll be able to outcompete the clover. What we'll be left with is a lush brassica plot, and all of the space around it will be filled in with clover. So underneath all those big brassica bulbs and under all the big leaves, there will be tons and tons of clover. So it's very browse resistant. There's food for the early season, there's food for the late season, and that seems to do very, very well for me. I had great results last year doing that. Step number 6 is to spray your food plot with glyphosate A lot of people are worried about spraying glyphosate after they put the seed down. It really does not matter. Glyphosate is a post-emergent, so it's only going to kill actively growing plants. And the reason we're spraying is to kill any remaining weeds. It's probably going to knock back the clover even more than it already has, which is good because we want to give those brassicas time to grow and germinate. So we're going to go ahead and spray this whole food plot with glyphosate. You can do this with a backpack sprayer. You can do this with a pull-behind sprayer like we're lucky enough to have today. The boys at Simon Brothers Outdoors were nice enough to lend me this for the day. So we're going to go ahead and get this sprayed, and then we'll move on to the next step. Step number 7 is to do the rain dance. I'm just kidding. Step number 7, we're actually going to come back in a few weeks after all this is growing and germinated, sometime around the 1st or 2nd week of September, and we're going to broadcast cereal rye, not ryegrass, but cereal rye, into this entire plot. We're going to go right over the top at 50 pounds per acre. And what that's going to do is it's going to fill in any remaining spots. If there's any amount of exposed soil, we're going to have cereal rye growing. Again, it's extremely browse tolerant. It's great into the late season. The deer seem to absolutely hammer it, even in the ag area. Now, if you're getting towards the end of September into the beginning of October and you still have exposed soil on the ground, step number 8 would be to go in again with 50 pounds per acre of cereal rye. Go right over the top again. It grows extremely fast. It germinates even in cold weather. And deer love the young rye. They like that new growth. So come in there, fill in the rest of the spots, and what you're gonna be left with is a lush green food plot that feeds deer from the very beginning of the season all the way through winter. And then that cereal rye and that clover is gonna green up first thing in the spring, and you're gonna have an amazing food plot in the spring for the fawns, for the turkeys, and all the other animals after a harsh winter, or a mild winter in the case of Northern Ohio in the last few years. We've got this food plot sprayed, we've got it planted, we put down our lime and fertilizer, and then we hung a couple Moultrie mobile cameras on here to monitor the deer activity. The only thing left is to pray for rain this weekend. Make sure you subscribe to my channel so you can follow along with all of my hunts this fall. I got a lot of really exciting things planned. But if you guys want more food plot content, check out these videos right here.